When you hear the word Japan, you probably imagine an almost perfect country. Beautiful, peaceful, safe, and harmonious. That's why many people dream of living the Japan life, and I was one of them. Months ago, my family and I were living that so called Japan life, but eventually we left. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Onad. I make daily life vlogs and mini walking tours as a hobby. Months ago, I left Japan for a simple life in the Philippines. The last time I came to visit here, I discovered how severe the leak from the concrete slab is. But since I still don't have enough funds to put a proper roof over it, I came back today to do a temporary fix. I've been reading all your comments from the last video, and some of you suggested using asphalt coating. So I went online and bought one. And yesterday, the package arrived. I read the reviews, and most of them were positive. So I decided to give it a try. I also searched for other methods, but this seemed to be the simplest one I could find. I bought three 4-liter cans because it says you need to apply 2 to 3 coats. Overall, this cost me around 4,500 pesos, since one costs around 1,500 pesos. I think it's more expensive than regular floor paint, and I still need to apply that after this. So while we do the waterproofing, I just want to talk about the real reason why I left Japan after only a year. I'll try to be as honest and transparent as possible. The opportunity to transfer to Japan came in 2024. To be honest, I wasn't expecting it, although I had already told my manager that I was interested if an opportunity ever came. The truth is, I was actually thinking of quitting my job back then and looking for other opportunities. But then, I received the promotion and the chance to work and live in Japan with my family. When I received the email from HR, I honestly didn't know what to feel. On the surface, it felt like nothing, but deep inside, I was actually excited. I accepted the offer, and the processing of my papers and visa began immediately. There were some delays, but they actually turned out to be beneficial on my side because the delay helped avoid the double taxation issue. Then, the day of the flight finally came. I was excited to be back in Japan, and after 4 hours of flying, I finally arrived. I thought I wouldn't experience any culture shock anymore, but strangely, it felt like my first time again. For those who don't know, I worked in Nagasaki for 4 years, about 10 years ago. The difference this time was that no one came to assist me or guide me through everything. I was on my own, and honestly, it was much harder than I expected. I didn't even know where my hotel was, so I had to search for it on maps, And the worst part is I had to rely on public Wi Fi because there was an issue in the activation of my SIM card. Anyway, fast forward 2 months later, and my family finally arrived as well. It was their first time traveling to another country, so of course, they were happy and excited too. Life in Japan was enjoyable at first. Finally, I was able to let my family experience what living in Japan was like. I was also excited to live that life again. But after several months passed, reality slowly started to sink in. I noticed that the excitement in my family slowly faded away. Going out during weekends no longer felt as exciting as it did in the beginning. I knew my kids were longing for friends, but it was difficult to find connections there, especially because of the language barrier. I also began to realize the reality myself. Yes, Japan is almost perfect, but that perfection can also become a double edged sword. Everything works almost exactly the way it should. The trains arrive on time, the streets are clean, people follow the rules, and daily life feels very organized. At first, it feels amazing. You feel safe, comfortable, and impressed by how disciplined society is. But over time, I slowly realized that living in a place that is almost perfect also comes with pressure. There is an unspoken expectation to always fit in, to avoid disturbing others, and to constantly follow the flow of society. People rarely say things directly, but you can feel it through their actions, their silence, and the distance they keep. Sometimes, even if no one openly tells you something is wrong, you can already feel that you don't fully belong. Here in the Philippines, life can be messy and imperfect, but people are expressive. Neighbors talk to each other, friends invite you outside, and even strangers can suddenly start conversations. In Japan, life felt quieter, too quiet sometimes. The longer we stayed, the more I realized that convenience alone is not enough to make a person happy. A country can be clean, efficient, and safe, but if you slowly feel isolated emotionally, that perfection can start to feel heavy. And I think that was the hardest part for me and my family. Not the work, not the language, but the feeling that no matter how long we stayed, we were still outsiders trying to fit into a system that was never really built for us. At my workplace, I also started noticing changes. The warm treatment I received at first slowly became colder over time. At first, I didn't really mind it, but as time went on, it slowly became heavier emotionally. To be honest, my job itself wasn't even that hard, and the workload was actually light. In fact, there were days when all you did was sit there pretending to be busy. But the silent treatment, the emotional distance, and the pressure of pretending to look busy every single day slowly became difficult to ignore. Then the time finally came for us to decide whether we would extend our stay or quit and go back home. So, first, I talked to my family and asked them honestly what they truly wanted. All of them said they no longer wanted to stay in Japan. To be honest, I asked them several times because I wanted to make sure those were really their true feelings. I even told my kids that maybe we could just go home for a vacation and then return to Japan afterward because I thought maybe what they were feeling was only homesickness. But after asking them again and again for almost a month, their answer never changed. They wanted to go home. And now, the final decision was left to me. Honestly, this was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. I remember when I was in Nagasaki years ago, working in a shipyard. I loved my job, but life back then was physically hard and exhausting. During summer, the heat was unbearable. During winter, the cold was just as brutal. Since our job site was in the open dock, there was really nothing we could do about it. On top of that, the distance from our apartment to the shipyard took more than an hour by bus. The worst part was waking up very early in the morning because the shuttle bus passed by our place before sunrise, and I've always hated waking up that early. That's why I told myself back then, if I ever returned to Japan to work again, I wanted an office job with air conditioning. I wanted the office to be close to my apartment, and I wanted a salary equal to, or even better than, that of a Japanese employee. Then fast forward 10 years later, and all of those things actually came true. I had an office job, the workplace was comfortable, the apartment was nearby, the salary was good. In many ways, I was literally living the life I had wished for 10 years ago. But in the end, I still had to let it go. So eventually, I talked to my manager. I told him about my decision. I said that I no longer wanted to renew my contract because my family and I had decided to return home for good. He asked me why, and honestly, I couldn't tell him the real reason directly. So I simply told him that I had unfinished business back home that I needed to take care of. He just nodded quietly. I think he already knew I wasn't telling the whole truth. Several days later, I received an email from the HR. The company was willing to relocate me to a different branch somewhere else in Japan, but I still declined. And so, here I am now, back in the Philippines, living a simple life once again. Maybe not a perfect life, but a life that feels more real to me. Now, some of you might say that I wasted a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I completely understand that because I used to think the same way whenever people I know would leave their Japan life and return to the Philippines. At that time, I would also wonder why anyone would give up something that looks so stable, so organized, and so perfect from the outside. I used to think that once you get that chance, you should hold on to it no matter what. But here's the hard truth I eventually learned for myself. You will never truly understand what it feels like unless you experience it yourself. Living in Japan is completely different from visiting it for a few days or even going there for a short vacation. When you're just a tourist, everything feels exciting. You see the convenience, the cleanliness, the order, and you only experience the best parts of the country. But everyday life is very different. When you live there long term, you start to notice things that are not visible during short visits. The routines become repetitive, the social dynamics become more distant, and the feeling of being fully at home doesn't always come easily. Even simple things can feel different when you are constantly adjusting to another culture, another language, and another way of interacting with people. On the surface, everything still looks amazing, organized, and ideal, but behind that surface, the daily reality can feel quiet, isolating, and emotionally different for each person. What I can say is this: Japan life is not for everyone. Of course, there are people who truly thrive there, people who find their rhythm, build strong connections, and feel completely at home. And that's great for them. I genuinely respect that. But it doesn't mean everyone will have the same experience or feel the same level of happiness and fulfillment just because it works for others. Finally, I just want to say that this video is not meant to discourage anyone who dreams of working and living in Japan. This video is only about my personal experience living in Japan, and your experience may be completely different, especially if you are still young or just beginning your career. And one piece of advice I can give as a senpai is this: if you are given the opportunity to work in Japan, especially as a trainee, prioritize learning the language. Take the JLPT exams and aim to pass at least N3. If you can pass N2 or even N1, then even better. Of course, skills are important as well, but you can always learn those while doing your job. You may not know this, but Japanese bilinguals often receive good salaries in the Philippines, especially in the tech or IT industry. Salaries can be more than double or even triple compared to non bilingual employees with the same role. The good part is that you don't need to be a college graduate or have finished a computer science or IT course to qualify. In many cases, knowing how to speak the language or having certification is already a huge advantage. I personally know many Japanese bilinguals working in the same field as mine. Sometimes they get promoted faster or are hired at a higher level simply because they can speak the language. Just be prepared mentally and emotionally if you decide to go there. Expect that life is going to be hard and will not always be as you imagined it to be. But if you always remember your purpose or goal in the first place, then those challenges can become your motivation. There will also be periods of adjustment, discomfort, and moments when you feel homesick, and that's normal. And that's it. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching.